So-called human rights group Amnesty wants Hamas to win and Israelis to die. Amnesty is trying to pressure Israel to stop fighting Hamas. Then Hamas can rearm and return. How? Amnesty accused Israel of the crime of genocide in Gaza. But Amnesty ignores what genocide actually means. Amnesty created a new definition of genocide just for Israel. Genocide is the deliberate killing of large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group within the aim of destroying that nation or group. Jewish lawyer Raphael Lemkin coined that term after the Holocaust. That's when the Nazis exterminated 6 million Jewish people. The same intent to destroy the Jewish people is what Hamas writes in its charters. Amnesty doesn't like the genocide definition that means Hamas may be perpetrators and Jewish people their targets. Amnesty writes they consider this an overly cramped interpretation of international jurisprudence. On October 7th, Hamas death squads murdered over 1,200 people. Hamas carried out the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Nazi Holocaust. Israel has the military capability to flatten Gaza in one day. Instead, Israel's troops have spent a year fighting and dying to root out Hamas. Amnesty wants to delegitimize the Jewish state so no one will stop Hamas from continuing to try murdering them. Amnesty is comparing the Jewish people with those like Hamas who murdered them in order to allow them to try again and again as Hamas promised. We must continue to expose Amnesty as cynical enablers of Hamas's war against Israel. You may have heard the tragic news from Gaza. Experts determined that 6 hostages whose remains were recovered from Hamas captivity in August had likely been executed by Hamas. Nadav Popelwell, Yagev Buchstab, Yoram Metzger, Chaim Peri, Alexander Densing, and Avraham Munder, may their memory be for a blessing. Hamas murderers shot them in their terror dungeons 6 months ago. Another hostage's remains were brought back to Israel by the IDF for burial yesterday. Itai Svirsky of blessed memory. Hamas kidnapped him, alive, and killed his family. Hamas also executed him in captivity. Hamas are savages that cannot be allowed to regroup, rearm, and retake Gaza. That's why, a year after October 7th, Israel is still fighting Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Earlier this week, Israel's troops eliminated 7 murderers who took part in the October 7th massacre. Hamas keeps saying that they want to do October 7th again and again and again. Hamas is down, but not out. That's why this war must end with the 3 Ds: destroy Hamas, demilitarize Gaza, and de-radicalize the Gazan society. That's what should happen. Now let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Jonathan. Our first question is from our Instagram stories. The IDF said today that it is continuing to discover and dismantle Hezbollah's military infrastructure in southern Lebanon. Do you expect these operations to continue? And are you surprised at how much they're finding?
Freedom of action. This is what Israel needs in order to make sure that Hezbollah wouldn't be able to rearm, regain its power again, and threaten Israel again at the border like they did on October 7th, October 8th, when they joined the war with Hamas. Hezbollah planned to do a much bigger October 7th than what Hamas did, but Israel was able to prevent it because it launched an operation in order to prevent that from escalating even more. The IDF continuing to destroy Hezbollah facilities in Lebanon is crucial in order to maintain future peace agreements that could happen with the Lebanese government that are also fighting in order to make sure that Hezbollah would leave the Lebanese people alone and bring Lebanon back to the Lebanese people. This is what should happen. The international community needs to support Israel by making sure that this terror group, that is an Iranian proxy controlling Lebanon and threatening Israel at the same time, cease to exist, not just on Israel's border, but also inside of Lebanese territories. This is for all of our futures, for both Lebanese, both Israelis, and the new Middle East that is being created as we speak right now.
Thank you. This question is from X. I'm following the complicated situation in Syria. One question I have is what's happening there good or bad for Israel? How do you see it?
It's really interesting. As Israelis, we a lot of times look at things only from Israelis' perspective. Although some people may think that the civil war in Syria or the downfall of the Assad regime would be helpful for Israel, because on one hand, the Assad regime has been 100% in alliance with the Islamic Republic of Iran and Hezbollah that are helping him to attack Syrian civilians from liberating themselves from the Assad regime, making sure that ammunition and missiles that were targeting Israeli civilians go past from the Islamic Republic of Iran through Syria to Lebanon. And this is, on one hand, something that as Israelis, we should think that is a good thing for us. And it is a good thing for us to prevent Iranian missiles being brought to Hezbollah, and then Hezbollah shoots them at Israeli citizens. Yet, on the other hand, you have the rebels, that some of them want to liberate themselves from the Assad regime. They want to be able to free themselves, live in their full democracy and liberty. Yet, some of these rebels are joined in alliances with Al Qaeda, with ISIS, that, as we all remember, since 2011 and 2012, they have persecuted Christians, they have persecuted also Muslims, also Yazidis, also other minority groups all over the Middle East, and they can't win also. So when we come to the question, who is the good guy and who is the bad guy in Syria? Well, my answer would be one is bad and one is worse. There's no one simple answer to answer that. I know that I really want to see the Syrian people liberate themselves, but on the other hand, we don't know what the outcome of that would be. But it's also important to understand that today the world needs to stand with the free, liberal Syrian people that just want to live their lives as they are.
This question is from Octavia on our Instagram stories. Why do you think there is no global outrage and no protests on college campuses about the war crimes of the Assad regime in Syria?
Thank you very much for this question, Octavia. This is the $1 million question that I've been asking myself, by the way, since 2012 when this civil war started. I wanted to know, where is the global outrage when the Assad regime bombed with sarin gas their own citizens, when 500,000 Syrians were killed in the civil war only up to 2015. This is something that, in my opinion, just shows the hypocrisy of the world, that when it comes to no Jews, there's no news. And this is something that has proven again and again. We can also see that in the crimes that the Houthis are doing against the Yemenites in Yemen by controlling them and also starving the people of Yemen that has nowhere to go. Also in Syria, the same thing is happening, where the international community, specifically college students that put themselves in the highest morals of humanity, considering themselves as the saviors of Middle Easterns from terror regimes and from whatever, suddenly complete quiet. Let's remind you that this war in Syria reignited again about a week ago. When Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, that night and the following day, October 8th, 2023, there was already thousands of people demonstrating against Israel, defending itself, after we had the largest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust, with 1,200 innocent Israelis being murdered and about 200 people kidnapped by Hamas to Gaza. Yet a week has passed, and I haven't seen almost one single demonstration. Not on college campuses, you're in session now, right? Not in the streets of London, not in the streets in European major cities, or even in the US. And this is, in my opinion, just proves how hypocrite the world is, that they don't really care for human lives. They just want to criticize Israel again and again because it's convenient and it's full of anti Semitism.
There are reports that Qatar is resuming its role as a mediator between Israel and Hamas. What do you make of Qatar's role? After 14 months, how do you maintain a sense of optimism that the hostages will come home?
Well, first of all, we still have 100 hostages that are being kept in the Gaza Strip by Hamas for more than 220 days. This is something that, to be honest, I didn't expect us to be that late. I expected that Hamas would understand that if they continue fighting this war, it will only lead to more suffering for the Gazan people. But it just makes us understand that they don't really care for their own people. They don't really care for any human rights. They don't really care for anything. They just want to survive. That has been their whole target since day one. They are willing to stop the war, but only if they will be able to regain back their power again, their weapons, and as they said, to do October 7th again. This is something that we will not accept. But also another thing, Qatar being a mediator in this hostage deal, in my opinion, it's another thing that I can't really understand because Qatar has been the #1 funding for Hamas for years. Millions and millions and millions of dollars have been sent by Qatar to fund Hamas's missile weapons and also to plan and execute what they did on October 7th. So Qatar being in the negotiation table could help on one hand because they are connected with Hamas, but on the other hand, they're trying to maintain this some sort of image that they are for peace and they are for stopping the war, but this is far from being the truth. And that's it. That's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for watching. And of course, thank you very much for tuning in. We will be back on Sunday at 3 p.m. Israel time and 8 a.m. East Coast time. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.